Hello and welcome to another episode of Beyond the Bid. Today, I am extremely honored and pleased to have Kirk Williams with us, one of the most respected voices in the PPC world, a huge inspiration for myself, Simone as well. He is the founder of ZATO Marketing, a boutique PPC agency, and has written books, has given TED Talks,
Yeah, no, thanks. Glad to be here.
And as always, we've got Simon for Supply, a brilliant strategist and person who is able to think from a partnership level with e-commerce clients. And as always, our CEO from 90friend, Simone. So we kind of were having already slight chats before this in preparation to this. But the agenda that we did kind of put together, I'll just kind of list it out. If this is the way it goes, that's fantastic. If it doesn't, let's keep it simple and engaged. But we were thinking about how Google as a company makes choices, where it's going, and how it'll affect us advertisers and brands generally within the PPC community because of everything that's happening within the AI and how quickly that's all developing. Philosophies for Google Ads and how businesses should approach these changes. Obviously, the reference to in terms of how this applies to shopping and sort of the stuff that we focus on, and maybe also have a chat and look at shopping versus PMAX. That was actually something I added because I was, Kirk, I wanted to ask you about some potential tests you might have done, but we can get into that a little later. I guess in terms of what we were talking about, where would you guys like to kick off the conversation first?
Start from the first point.
Start from the first point. Okay, let's do that. So, how many of you guys watched the most recent Google event? I've lost the word.
Google Marketing Live. Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, I was there, so I had to.
You were there?
Yeah.
Oh, nice. How was that?
Yeah. It was good. Yeah. So a few of us, so probably about 15 of us were invited to also then. So we did the actual Marketing Live. We were there. And then we also kind of closed door meetings with Google product leads and engineers and just kind of trying to give them some advertiser feedback. That was all NDA stuff. So kind of one of those, like some of that stuff we can't talk about. Some of it goes into, flows into just everything we talk about anyways, like probably no shock of anyone. We complained about hidden other search terms, stuff like that as part of it. But yeah, anyways, so that was super interesting, and we could, chat about that. But I don't know. It's always interesting talking to Googlers and seeing a little bit behind the doors of what's going on. And I have lots of thoughts overall, but yeah.
Well, I mean, it's first of all awesome that you were invited. Second, really cool that they even opened a dialogue. I guess the question I would ask would be like, when you voice the concerns, like for example, other search terms, especially on Broadmatch. If you're using Broadmatch, it's like there's less and less information. PMAX is also a bit of a culprit from a lack of information. Thank God to people like Mike Rose who give these insights that we wouldn't have had otherwise. How do they take that feedback? Like when you say that, do they like try and actively think about how they're going to fix it?
Yeah. So and I'll note this again, like basically what I've communicated a lot publicly is also what I'll communicate privately behind closed doors, sort of deal, which is often I think, like I've spoken a lot about this on LinkedIn and stuff, and it's just I think that Google has a trust problem right now. I think that they have legal problems right now. the DOJ is pursuing them. I think there's a lot that they have, like competitor problems right now. In terms of they've just always had TikTok and ChatGPT and stuff like that, right? And I think that it's just I think it is in their favor to, as much as possible, make it clear to advertisers the value that they are providing, especially in terms of like performance. So like, does at the end of the day, the maybe the most simple thing that we have to answer to our clients and that Google kind of has to answer is like, is it worth it to advertise on Google, right? Will my clients make money they would not have made by spending money on Google? At the end of the day, like that's it. And and so just trying in some of these things going into specifics, but also just communicating as much as possible, you need to not just help us do that, but also like help detail out, help communicate on that. You guys would kind of be aware of this and know this as well. Like as an agency, that's also kind of what we have to do. There's like you need to manage things well, and then also there's some level of like you also need to know how to communicate well. Those are two things that are very important. And I think there are ways that Google has failed at that, especially in the past. So to answer your question, like I think I've actually seen Google shifting publicly and privately more and more in terms of like it just seems like they really do want to hear. And I just remember conversations like 5 years ago with engineers or people at conferences or things like that where they would listen. I mean, it's not like they were rude, but they would listen, but it was always this level of like, yeah, but
One-sided.
we're the ones who kind of know, we're the engineers, and so at the end of the day, like meh, whatever. And it almost feels increasingly like they are increasingly aware of the ecosystem, which is advertisers who spend money do kind of need to know some of this stuff, whether you think that it's helpful to your algorithms or not. So you got to kind of figure that out. I think Ginny Marvin, I'll give her tons of props. I think she's been a
Yeah.
big part of that, of just like of kind of working a little bit both. As I see her, it almost seems like her job, I mean, it's liaison. Like it's like she communicates Google to us. My perception is that she is definitely taking us to Google and being like, hey, here's and advocating for us as well.
Oh, she's doing a great job, really, because it's like one person that basically represent the company for a whole set of advertisers on LinkedIn. Because basically she speaks to agencies on LinkedIn, people who blame Google for something, and then she
Mhm.
comes in and say, no, but this is we have in the roadmap, or we have this. Is actually great, like to have a figure like her in this
Mhm.
panorama, really. It's just
Yeah,
great.
it's super interesting. And like just to illustrate sometimes too the size, because another aspect, there's so many interesting complexities about like Google. One of it is just the sheer size. I mean, there's like 100,000 people working there or something. I forget the exact number. You know, you can
100,000. Well, I know it'll be a
you
lot.
can Google it. You know,
You can go
but
there.
like there's a lot of people and there's a lot of different you know products and a lot of different whatever. And so, just to illustrate, like I was chatting with a merchant center lead who had a very specific thing he was building in merchant center. And I just kind of offhand mentioned, oh yeah, I was talking with, Ginny Marvin, the ads liaison. And he didn't know who she was. And it was just kind of funny where it was like his job is to build things for us, but he was literally not even aware of the existence of a very high level, like important person to communicate with us. It was just kind of this interesting, like, yeah,
Realization. Yeah.
it's big. There's just it's disjointed and big, and that's a little bit also of their challenge with all that. So
That's very true. It's scary. And it's like
yeah.
you don't know what you don't know is what makes it makes it difficult to try and like figure out where they're going or how to even communicate. But at least like I mean I've the information I've ingested over the years has been like mostly just the fact to download to see what's kind of happening. But over the last like say maybe 6 months to a year, I've tried to get involved in the conversation, and because of that, the I guess the algorithm and the feed is giving me more of that information. I'm starting to see like the discussion developing, and I feel like
Mhm.
over the last couple of years, not even just like PPC, but a lot more of the advertisers, or even in some cases larger brands, are starting to get into this conversation with Google, and I feel like they are starting to pay more attention. But I like kind of the cynic in me tends to ask like,
Mhm.
okay, hey, is this because TikTok's appeared and it's kind of blown everything out of the water? There's now
Mhm.
Chat GPT, and Google's kind of not like in my head. Google was always king for a very long time, and it's like that. This is it because things have changed? Because I remember they used to have on their site like do, do no evil. Like if you, I remember there was a link on the site, but they removed it, and I remember that post kind of started kind of picking up traction. But it's like, have they done better because they're losing power, or because they're starting to listen to us, or is it a collection? Anyway,
I I don't know if I have a great answer, but also there's some level where as a pragmatist, it's kind of like I don't really know and almost don't care in terms of like at least they're doing better. Like undoubtedly they as a business with, fiduciary responsibilities to their shareholders, undoubtedly, you know, the threat of that decreasing, of their value decreasing is will push a business into healthier decisions at some point, or well, maybe some businesses, Enron more to fraud, right? But yeah. So anyway, so like undoubtedly that does have a part of it. A little bit of that probably is just like that's the the business. Props to them if that is the case, where they are actually seeing, hey, this is impacting our bottom line. How do we improve that? And if that means listening to us, I'll take that. One conversation along these lines that it might be worth your listeners listen to would be Fred Vallet's. He runs Optimizer. Are you familiar with him?
Yeah, he
Fred?
had
Yeah.
actually. I was going to bring it up before. He had an episode like 4 days ago with.
Yes.
Yeah.
Where he interviews Ginny. It's
Yes,
a really helpful. It's a really helpful episode, and they actually talk a little bit about that. And this is one of those things where like direct advertiser feedback is helping. And one of those things is like if anyone's noticed, GML, some people I heard complaining about how there wasn't really anything quotation marks big announced. The funny thing is like there kind of was, like AI Max for search is a pretty big deal and change and that sort of thing. But in some ways, like the benefit is like the old, like 5 years ago, Google probably would have been like, hey, everyone, here it is. And like we're shutting off all of these other campaigns because of that. And it's not really that anymore. It's more of a, here's this new opportunity. We're going to add this into the mix. They're going to, so we can figure out how to utilize that, begin testing it. If we find value, switch costs over it, that sort of thing as we're able to, which I think is a huge positive for them rolling out new features. Just because like shocking the system to me with algorithms and people just never really does great.
yeah.
So anyway, so I was happy about that. Yeah.
Well, this kind of actually goes into the last point we talked about, which is like shopping versus PMAX, and I'll refer back to as well the interview with Fred and Ginny where they were saying how like the features for shopping had like they're actually giving it a little bit more weight, and they're trying to not like completely disclude it like all the other products that they would do after they put out something big. And it's interesting to see that they've actually sort of kind of listened. But this would be, I guess, the question, and maybe you don't have the answer. Like we don't necessarily have the answer right now. We are testing shopping versus PMAX with some of our larger e-commerce accounts, and we haven't necessarily found something defined. Now we spoke with Adrian Decker like 3 or 4 weeks ago, and he was telling us that on the shopping campaigns that he was testing the cost per, like just the costs in comparison were just much more inflated in comparison to what it used to be. Have you done any tests? If so, what have you found?
Yeah, we've been testing that. We pretty much test it in every account we run and have been since PMAX came out. We've definitely noticed a shift over the last year, and I would attribute that to Google changing up the way they rank shopping campaigns in PMAX, where now it's going according, like they're even now. It's going according to ad rank as opposed to what it was in the past, which was PMAX just cannibalized.
Yeah.
And because of that, we've definitely noticed overall that shopping tends to perform better in terms of directly attributed like sales and efficiency ROAS in our accounts. But that being said, they are different products, and we often do run them together because of that. Kind of figuring, hey, if Google's gonna decide which of these is the best campaign, we'll run both of them. To your point, I would say, so one of the ways that I probably think differently than others on PMAX would be, I just don't think there is this is the one thing you should do in PMAX in every single instance. Because we have tried it in so many different accounts and just found that there are just different ways that it works and different ways to set it up and just all these things. There's so many variables that work into it. There may even be an account, like let's say we get an account spending quite a bit of money. There's one PMAX campaign that's doing well, but there's just a whole lot of products. And so a lot of those products aren't even getting, exposure. We may know that, hey, the best thing to do would be to, at least not know what we think. We should segment this out maybe by product type and get some of these going, or maybe we want to test some, test different product type plus like price point or things like that. But like, even though we know that's kind of the ideal that we think will work best, we want to get to, we're just not going to pull that trigger right away in the account, because we've seen how that can actually harm an account, as opposed to maybe over time, like shifting it over to that. So again, kind of the whole like no best practices for us works a little bit, where I just think there are some really core important strategies and things to know about how all this stuff works. And then like testing and seeing what works a little bit differently in every account, I think is really important. So.
Yeah, feels like there are like a lot of people that are trying to move in a similar direction. Sorry, am I quiet? Is my audio quiet?
A little.
I hear you okay.
All right.
Okay.
A little quiet, but I can hear you. Yeah.
All right.
Okay,
so yeah, it feels like there are a lot of people that are trying to move in this direction, really. So first of all, like the first good point is that at one point, Google really listened to what advertisers were saying, and then kind of said, all right, okay, you can basically launch PMAX and shopping at the same time, and it's the other end that is going to evaluate which campaign will serve. And that was a really a good thing, really, I would say, because like PMAX was getting a lot of negative feedbacks. So I definitely like a good point from Google here. And since then, like there are more and more people that really talk about how to test, like how to run shopping campaigns and PMAX at the same time. We use like a kind of a similar approach. Like for example, like we have like some PMAX that run in the background, and then we have like some shopping campaigns that contains the product that we think they're going to do better than the others. So we just try to give them more exposure in a certain way, maybe by having a dedicated campaign or by segmenting out some different product types or whatever. So it feels like really Google is trying to just in some ways and sometimes go to like what advertisers are asking for, and at least is also giving like the advertisers.
Oh, did he drop for you too?
Yeah. Just that occasionally happens at his workspace. He'll be back.
Yeah,
Comedy
he's
cut.
like, I will tell you the one thing you need to know. Drop.
Just gone.
This one thing will change your life. Bam, out.
Right on the hanger.
Clickbait Simone. Yeah, here we go.
Dude, that you couldn't have done that better deliberately. That was great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was great. Anyways, you were it was
Anyway,
good. Yeah.
Before I lose my train of thought, he's like at least he's giving the advertiser that narrative that they need to communicate to clients, because they like, okay, you maybe start with the PMAX, and then as an agency you go to the client and say, look, but what if we try something else and we overlap the shopping campaigns on top of PMAX as well. Like Simon can tell you a lot about this, because I'm doing this with him all the time.
Mhm.
And and at least we have always something to talk about. But I mean, is a fair test, and it's something that Google is doing right, I feel like. Definitely a good point here. But like on top of that, there are like a few features that Google, like I said, that was going to release last year in the previous GML that was profit, that I'm yet to see this feature. Like, and like is like, okay, what happened to what they announced?
Mm-hmm.
Have you seen it somewhere?
I remember. No, I mean, and that is somewhat googly of them. So like, I remember it was like 2015 or something, where I was at some Google thing in New York, and I just remember, I've shared this anecdote before on other things. Like, I remember sitting there and like literally the Google speaker said, I think it was either we have solved or we will solve attribution in the next 2 years or something like that. And I laughed. It was just kind of like, no, you're not. Like, you saying that shows you didn't understand the complexity of it, and like, shockingly, like they didn't actually solve it. So anyway, so I think sometimes, and this is kind of my thing, like Google, I don't know if you can escape this, which is the whole part of like innovators and innovation. You do kind of need to like shoot for the stars and just be like, this is what we can do. And then it's like, you're not going to always hit it. So I think sometimes, they'll do that. they'll say, this is what we'd like to do. And then it's almost like they get in the weeds of it and they're like, oh gosh, this is,
This is much
wow,
more
this is
complicated.
more complex than we thought. Or like, oh, dang it, this, all these privacy issues or whatever. So I think that's somewhat part of what happens with sometimes some of those, announcements. Yeah. So.
But like I gotta say that like since they started talking about AI and introducing AI in their products, our life has become like easier in a way, and like even like a client's life and profitability has become like better, because like we had a few conversation here internally about like the cost of producing assets and the possibility of producing assets from a client point of view, right? So which is something that we need more and more, especially with PMAX, especially with PMAX or with Meta or with
YouTube and
TikTok, right? We need assets, we need images, we need videos. And I think that Google here is responding in the right way, with the good AI features. Now, the last one, which I haven't tried yet, because in Europe everything comes at least 6 months later, which is like improvements to the AI videos that Google does. So I watched a few videos, and people, which are the most difficult thing really to do in AI,
to
they
replicate.
look really real. I was having it with Simon on Friday. I think it was on Friday before we went on holiday. We're talking about this.
Yeah.
This is basically going to change. No, I'm not going to call it like a revolution, but this is going to change how we approach things. Is going to change how much clients are going to spend on producing assets. Is really going to have an impact on the bottom line here, and it's definitely like a movement in an interesting direction, because everybody can use ChatGPT or another AI tool to produce images and videos, but having something that is really specialized in creating images or improving images or create videos, AI videos, that is going to change everything. It's going to become much easier to produce it and mass produce it as well. And definitely like a step in the right direction, in my opinion, here. And something that Google has been talking about it for at least 2 to 3 years. And they've made some huge improvements in comparison to Meta, or in comparison to TikTok as well, which is still rely on user-produced videos and user-produced images, because they still cannot get good AI images or videos.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the way that this stuff works, like AI, and we'll look at our Google Ads account, and it'll be your recommendations in your ad headlines or product studio or things like that, tools we have now that sometimes are like just terrible. And I think it's just really important to realize we're in like this early transitional phase, but that will change. Like these things are going to get incredibly good. Again, like some of the conversations I had with like some of the engineers specifically in Merchant Center on one of the specific things they're working on, like it's incredible what they are thinking about already, and all of the various contextual things that will come eventually, right? So some of that is just like yeah, I actually think that's a challenge for them though too, in its own right, that they're aware of, is just how do you build in a transitional time for the ideal future, and yet kind of the where you are now as well. Like here's where advertisers are now, here's where AI is now. We're still not really to the point where in Google you can put an image in there and you'll get this phenomenal video out with a few prompts. I think that's coming, but like we're not there yet. But also like they kind of need to build for both.
Yeah.
So anyways, yeah, there's some challenges for them too, but it'll definitely come. So if anything, one takeaway would be just people, again, like our job as advertisers, like how can I look at this all the time, how can I make my client account successful right now with the specific tools we have right now and what's working right now, while also keeping a very close eye to the future and what I think will come, and like anticipating what we're going to need to know and build for, so that as that happens, we can kind of like shift into that rather than just be endlessly surprised with, with all of that. And that's probably something for people just to kind of ponder of how they can do both of those things too.
The first when I saw when I saw the VO, I always get it wrong, VO3, but basically the
Yeah.
AI video production thing, the first thing that came to my mind, like first I was like, oh, this is cool. A lot of clients who do not have video production capabilities could start to make some things that are really cool. But the first kind of like backlash I felt was the ethics behind it. You can now create any video saying anything you want, and it could be completely untrue, but no one will ever know the difference. And I was like,
I think I was saying to Simone last week, like even in a year or two, like nothing's going to be believable. And like anything
Yeah.
with AI, I think from an advertiser's perspective, or even a general use perspective, is the velocity and output once this becomes publicly available. It's just going to be a huge waterfall, basically, of all of this content that looks incredible. And I suppose from an advertiser's perspective as well, is that when your client has a series of competitors and everyone's using the same tools to create these ultimately massively like really polished advertising campaigns, as a consumer, who do you trust? And of course you've got reviews and things, but it's going to be interesting for sure.
Have you seen that HBO movie? Is like just came out. I think it's called Mountainhead.
no.
With like Steve Carell. It's basically it is basically this conversation. It's these like 4 tech billionaires, and they're like talking about like basically one of them just released their new updated video thing, and it's basically causing like wars. And they're just kind of like processing out how they can make more money and stuff. It's actually really a really interesting, fun watch. So
I'm gonna check
yeah.
that out later.
Yeah, basically, like especially in lesser developed countries in the world where they're not quite at least this in the movie where they're maybe not quite as prepared for, hey, this could just be a totally fake video. So then they talk about like, okay, someone made a video of like this group attacking another group and it was totally fake, but then this group believed it and now they're like actually battling for real. And yeah. Like so they're like curiously, whoever produced that is like very on top of the potential ramifications of this stuff, because already they already produced it and it's out. It's just interesting video. So
that's awesome. I'm gonna definitely check that out. But I was shocked. I didn't think we'd get there that quickly. I mean, that quick. Oh, he's gone again.
He's done.
Yeah, he's done. That's it. He's like, I gotta go. Gotta see my wife. No, he said he has till 8 p.m. He's back. We missed you.
All right.
Nice to see you.
Yeah. Nothing I can do about it right now. Sorry.
It's all good.
But I worry. I mean, okay, I have troubles with remembering exact dates and such. But like, when did chat come out? It's been like 2 years, 3 years, ish, right? We should Google or actually ask chat. Like, hey, when did you come out?
Yeah, a couple of
It was
years.
2022 or something. Yeah.
2022. I think it was like off the pandemic. People went batshit using it. When did you? Okay, raise your hand.
November 30, 2022. So this is at least.
Okay. All right, raise your hand. Who has it installed on their computer?
Like a local version?
Yeah. Well, not as it an app or I mean.
Oh yeah. I have it. I actually, it's on my list to like install it as like a local version so I can have it a little bit more
secure.
So you can utilize it more. Yeah, so more secure. But anyways, yeah.
Yeah. But
yeah, I actively use it.
So like LinkedIn posts, I am crap at idea generation. I absolutely I overthink. Like it's like, okay, who honestly, who gives a shit about what I'm going to say? Like that's like, okay, chat, give me like 5 ideas for a LinkedIn post. And then like, first of all, I've noticed, I've asked this question a lot in the last like month and a half since I started posting, but like I've noticed the ideas it creates, the content it uses, I've seen in other people's LinkedIn posts. And then there's these phrases now that I see that I know have come from chat, and it's like, okay.
It's always like with descriptions, it's like capture the essence, and it's like, gotcha.
Yeah. Because like I love it for idea generation, but like when I see it, I'm like, okay, I need to relate it to something that I care about or I'm doing or at least looking into, and then I completely change it. But I use it for like the base framework, and it saves me shitloads of time. How do you guys use
it? So just for fun, so I wrote a trilogy of books through ChatGPT and published them just to see what would happen. Yeah, it's on Amazon. It's called My pen name is Kyrie Deadwood. It's like, and it was just one of those where I was just like, I wonder what's going to happen. And so I started giving it prompts, and I was like, yes, yeah, the Thornbound trilogy. That's exactly. I've never read them. So my son read one, and he's like, yeah, it's a pretty good story, actually. I was like, okay, cool. But like, I had it like, it was just, it was almost one of those, like, I wonder what's possible. You know what I mean? Where you're just like, and so I just like prompted it. I did this in like 2 evenings, sort of a deal. And again, and this is kind of that point of like, what does this mean for the future of everything?
Yeah.
But like they I don't think I've sold any copies, which is totally fine. Again, it was just more like, wonder what. So I like cover design, like literally every single thing on this is ChatGPT generated, where I would give it prompts, and sometimes I would sometimes I would lead a little bit. I'd be like, okay, now like kill off a main character and introduce another character in this chapter, and stuff like
go Game of Thrones style.
No, and the really funny thing is, so like it's like the Voidborn are like the enemy, because I don't. Have you guys ever played Halo? Like the game?
Oh yeah, I love Halo.
Yeah, okay.
I mean the early ones.
Yeah, I'm a huge Halo fan. Shit. And like there was just something, sorry, spoilers, there was something about you're fighting the Covenant alien race, and then all of a sudden this totally new enemy comes in. So I was like, I want that idea in my book. So it invented this like new. So anyways, and then like, but if you Google that online, there's a ton of Amazon books with like the Voidborn, and I'm kind of wondering if that's like a ChatGPT like thing, this enemy, and like other people are having ChatGPT write their books, and it's coming up with all the same. So anyways, all that to say, I don't know. Like, I don't know what to expect. So what I think is that there is, if you are going to use AI, and I think of like LinkedIn posts,
Yeah.
I think the key is like the people I see who use it the best are those who already have expertise, and they're using it almost like this virtual assistant to like improve, refine, and still get them further, but they like have that base knowledge, right? And it's kind of the people who are like writing books or something, that is where it's totally all made up. That I think is where it can become a problem and become really easy to spot and all that sort of thing. So yeah, I have 6 kids. My oldest is 14.
Well played.
And I've already been like walking him through a little bit of like, hey, here's how to think through LLMs. I mean, because I do think like that's a future of our kids, but in a way where I'm helping him, like, hey, how do you know this algebra homework and know how to do this? And then here's a thing we're stuck on. Okay, let's go to ChatGPT, not just to get the answer and walk away, but be like,
to learn.
How do we solve this and explain this process? So it's actually kind of like teaching him. So he's still like learning a skill. It's not like replacing his knowledge and skill. It's like assisting him in growing it. So anyways, that's kind of what I think is the way to use it. Not just like writing books that you have not read.
In 2
days.
That's
not good. We don't need to flood Amazon with those.
Yeah, well,
but it was kind of fun.
No, that's cool. First of all, the first when I wrote Kyrie Deadwood, the first one was Waterstones. Is there Waterstones in the US? Because I know it's in the UK. That's where you buy books. So your book is in. Well, I can buy it in the UK. I think.
I mean, I think it's on Amazon. I think it's on multiple, is wherever Amazon publishes it, I guess. So it might, I don't know. It's probably in, I think like UK, India, stuff like that. There's Germany probably.
Yeah, that's probably everywhere.
Kyrie Deadwood is taking over the world.
Yes, exactly. But hey, I love the way you that you explain how to use chat. I remember like when I first realized what was Google. With time, it's like asking the right question will always get you the better result. It's not like putting in 1 or 2 words, but like the long tail searches to a point, obviously. But I feel like that's just evolved now into what is chat. And if you know how to use it in an assistance point of view, it can really help amplify the sort of outcome and information that you get from it. Like when it's not just even one question, but an entire conversation. Like I remember for kind of just for giggles, I went through with it and did like a business planning session for like 3 hours. It was insane what it produced for me. Like it was like questions asking about the company, like where you're at, what are your margins, what do you like? The first actually, one thing I really liked was what are your values? And I was like, this is cool. And it's like it tries to understand you from a human perspective and then kind of relays that into like this almost cultural document. And it was like 3 hours, and I couldn't even continue because I haven't even thought that far into the company because it started asking me questions I didn't have answers to. I was like, right, okay,
Yeah.
I should talk to myself more to figure out how to answer these questions. But yeah, inputs are important.
Yeah, I mean it really is like having this 24/7 virtual assistant, and I've learned a lot more and more about prompts. There's some people who really are good at knowing how to kind of ask the right questions and prompt it in just the right ways. Pretend you're an expert in this, whatever. Yeah, it's just it's interesting stuff. So I've started using it more too for helping me. Like I'm trying to record more of my Merchant Center Mastery YouTube videos, where I'm trying to go through
By the way.
attributes and shopping attributes and things like that. And sometimes just like, kind of getting that initial outline. So a lot of times I'll just say, hey, go read these various things and then develop me an outline for at least the main things I should talk about on this attribute. And then oftentimes, again, like I usually do need to do a decent amount of editing of that, but it takes that initial step out so I can edit and then shoot. So yeah, lots of ways to use it, and we'll probably all keep finding new ones. So
definitely, it's freaky. It is freaky though how quickly it is moving. All right, sweet. Well, let's talk e-commerce. I don't really know what I'm going to ask or what we're going to talk about, but I guess with the way that things are shifting, actually, I miss the manual world. I really liked having that. I miss SCAGs.
it was more stable and dependable, in my opinion.
Yeah, you had the ability to really understand where you're spending money, how well it's doing, and you could single things out. Now, I guess the question is like consolidation versus what's non-consolidation? Segmentation. Have you found that consolidation is still like? I know this is kind of a difficult question because it depends on the client count, all that kind of crap. But like in general terms, consolidation versus segmentation. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of like when to segment, when to think about how you advertise, find keywords, that sort of thing, or
Yeah, I guess so. With products or even search ads, I mean PLAs.
Mm-hmm. So, so the comment I made earlier, which I still stand by about, missing the manual days, things were more stable. Like that's true. And the flip side, and here's kind of where I also agree with, like, things have just changed. I mean, I get it. Like consumer searching has changed. Like, I've seen stuff put out even by like SEO people and that show how like consumer search query behavior has gotten more simple, and some of that is just like we've just gotten used to Google having all of that information on us and like feeding us personalized results, right? So, which my personal opinion is, I think search is going to be around. I think it's going to go in two different directions because not everyone wants to have a conversational query, like conversation about every single thing, right?
Yeah.
Like I don't need an entire conversation about finding the best coffee, sort of a deal. And so in that case, it's almost nice just to be like, where's the best coffee? And actually have it be personalized and know me. So I think search will probably go into these like super like short personalized results, or like the crazy complex conversational. And it's almost like both of those have their own challenges. So in some ways, that's why I note, like, in terms of how do we build Google Ads campaigns, I do think actual search behavior is part of what's changed. And so that's also just part of why, in some ways, like our segmentation and how we think about it just has to evolve. On the e-commerce side of things, I think we rely more on some of those automated like DSAs. I am interested to try. We haven't really done, I don't think, anything much with AI Max for search, but there are some potentials there that I'm interested, where if Google does have their bidding algorithms that have all this contextual information, can we just say these are the people I'm interested in finding, and like, go on all of these 200,000 products, go find them. So I think there are some level, of that where we've switched from that. Probably on some of our core, like our core terms, like we still segment out brand terms for sure. That to me is a business decision. A brand term is someone who is clearly at a further place down the funnel because they knew enough about you to search for you. That means you have invested dollars into raising awareness in front of them somehow in the past. And therefore, because of that, like you need that to be a higher efficiency click because you've already invested dollars, right? And so that's one of those things where like that's a big part of how we try to think through our accounts would be that like warm audiences, cold audiences, assigning them ROAS targets or efficiency targets or that based on that. Yeah, so I think so some of that is like we're also trying to figure that out. We definitely are far more into grouping thematic ad groups than we used to in the past, like not just as concerned thematic ad groups that often will align with whatever that landing page content and purpose is. Yeah. So I still think there's a strong argument for like if let's say you have a brand campaign and you have a ton of search terms you see where the word review is in there with your brand or product, definitely still pull review terms into their own ad group, I think, and then drop them on maybe a page where you have customer reviews talking about them or that sort of thing. I think there are still ways that you can do that and segment for those sort of things. So that's
relevancy is still
there are
important.
still ways to act smartly. I mean, as you say, like the review things is something, or like whenever someone is searching for discount code, right? So there are still smart ways to use it. I remember there was a case study of Grammarly, and the competitors of Grammarly. There was like advertising smartly, especially in the ads. There are like there is still a reason why like agencies needs to be around in a way because because we have experienced different things, we have seen like different things, and we have experience in like basically managing like an account in a smarter way. I like to think, but but like the thing of the search behavior, right, is something important. You remember a few years ago when Google was releasing insights on how important was the near me terms. And how everything is really changing right now. Like I think it was relatively easy for them to provide these insights. They were looking at the search terms. They were looking at like what is the most popular search term. What can we say about it? Great. And now is about, okay, so how do I capture this user? Which is more about audiences. It's more about like, okay, I want to get like I want to target people in the DIY that are interested in DIY. So how do I do it smartly? It's not only by targeting search terms, because someone that is searching for a power tool may be searching for on YouTube for best ways to shape my bushes, right? And this person is interested in a power tool, and now Google needs to account for this search behavior, which is kind of hard, like possibly like with the search AI and PMAX, sorry, AI Max, is it called AI Max? Sorry,
AI Max,
AI Max,
yeah,
and PMAX will be able to capture these users as well, and it's like is more going in that direction, right? So when you tell Google, okay, I'm interested in targeting these people, but again, we fall into this conversation of how Google is listening to the advertisers, because you can input like all of the audiences that you want to target. You can be really refined with the keywords that you want to use. I'm talking about PMAX here. And then Google, yes, takes it into account, and then suddenly just can go and target someone else and doesn't tell you. So I'm like, okay, okay, do you listen to us? Like, because otherwise, if you don't, like, the trusting you
what's the point?
is a bit challenging.
Yeah. I tend to think that words still matter, but to your point, more generic words really do need additional bidding signals that Google has. But that's where, like, I do try to push back on Google sometimes when it seems like they're running too far back into the words no longer matter, it's about audiences, stuff like that. And they've probably never said that. It's just, it kind of seems to be where they're building.
Yeah.
Because there's just some level of like, no, you're totally right if someone says power tools, right? But like if someone's like, hey, I want this very specific, DeWalt hand drill, blah 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 right now, that to me is where that search term truly is, like, to me, the purchase intent of that search term now does actually overcome any other bidding signal I want to show on that search term, right? Because if I have that DeWalt power drill, right? And so I think that's where, to me, it's a little bit of this balance, and I think they've gotten imbalanced on that. I think they've gone too far away from allowing us to still aggressively say these are the very specific terms, especially for small budget accounts who who don't have a lot of money for learning and training and all that. And they actually, if we could like target just these specific terms, I still think there's a bit of value there. And then on way more of a lot of those generic stuff, absolutely, all of the rest of their bidding, their bidding signals, who the user is, past history, all that is super important, and we do need that. So I kind of think it's a both and I think Google has gotten imbalanced in going a little bit too much in that direction and forgetting that, especially on some of those like longer terms, they really still do signal very specific intent that can, to me, overwrite some of the audience stuff that we actually still need to bid on, which is the core of search. Search is language. It is words, So
But like,
I don't know.
do you mean
we'll see if they listen to me.
Do you mean there is still room
Fingers
for
crossed.
tagging?
What's that?
Do you mean that there is still room for to create like a SCAG structure whenever you have like a certain keywords in exact match and then you want to bid for that specific keyword?
I don't think there is anymore because I think Google's ruined it with close variants and low search volume terms. I hate low search volume terms. Like there'll be terms that we know are coming in at low impression in that, but that we really are highly valuable, that we could have very high conversion rates on, and we won't be able to show for them by targeting them specifically with like an exact match term in some small budget accounts, because we have some real small budget accounts, and so those are the terms where I wish that we could do that as well as more of the big picture,
start to roll out.
user focused stuff. Yeah. So
I just have to say, before when we were talking about the whole Max thing, it was like Performance Max, AI Max, and then in my head, as you guys continued, was HBO Max. I was like,
yes,
everyone's adding
yes,
Max.
which curiously changed to Max, and then they were like, crap, sorry, we're going back to HBO Max.
Yeah.
I don't know if you heard that announcement. That really cracked me up, because I remember when that happened. I remember being like, I don't understand why they're like killing off their brand. Like everyone knows them as HBO. Why would you kill that off? Maybe they know something I don't. Now they're back. Now they threw it back in there.
Yeah. I couldn't believe that. I remember I loved HBO for a while. I didn't know there was home box office. I was like, wow, that's so explanatory. Almost kind of dull.
I don't think I ever knew that.
Really? Yeah, I googled. I was like,
I think I just learned that.
Yeah, home
that's
box office.
Hilarious.
I know.
Ah, interesting. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, that's exactly what.
Yeah, that's hilarious.
So, yeah.
I mean, and HBO's had so many like high quality stuff. Like a few brands have done that, where they're just like, yeah, we just want to ditch our brand that we spent 100 years building. and then another executive comes along and they're like, that was a dumb idea.
What are you doing? Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe we all lost our minds after COVID, and maybe like we're like kind of resetting a bunch of that stuff.
Yeah, that'll take a decade probably. Nice. Well, I know we're at time. Simone, I know you said you had to go, so I guess we can close up shop. But hey, look, Kirk, I just want to say it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on to chat to you, get your opinions on stuff. Like I said, true honor. Thank you for being with us.
Yeah, same. It was fun to chat with you guys.
Yeah, we should do it again if hopefully we didn't act too weirdly and the time zone isn't too. Where were you based again? Sorry.
I'm in Montana, in the U.S.
Yeah, fair. Okay.
Yep.
So what time is it for you right now? It's like
it's 11.
11
yeah, 11 a.m.
Yeah,
so you're probably in the evening.
I'm 8 p.m.
Evening hours.
Simone is at 7 p.m. and Simon is at 6 p.m. because he's in the UK. Yeah. But like I said, thank you again for coming on. We're still learning how to do post-production, so hopefully we'll have this out in the next week. Is it okay if we tag you and stuff like that?
Yeah, please do. Yeah, I'd be happy to share it. So
Okay, awesome. Well, hey, thanks again, man. I'll stop the recording.